Well, welcome to Becoming a Practical Mystic. This is our third discussion, and we are looking at mystics through different religions and through different times, and looking at what it can teach us personally and how we can use mysticism for our self healing as well as healing of the world. And I'm being joined this evening. Oh, by the way, I'm Reverend Barbara Williams. I always forget to say that. And I'm being joined by our music director, Janine Chimera, and we are part of the Unity of Chautauqua family. So we're so glad you're here. And know that this is being recorded. It's on YouTube. And if you're watching it on YouTube later, would love for you to share it with a friend, to come to our website, unity dot or unitychq.org. And there you can sign up for our emails and get notes from the discussions we have. So I'm now going to invite Janine. She is going to lead us in a song, and then we're going to have a few moments of silence in which we just center ourselves as we begin our discussion.
So you can join. Barbara's going to put the lyrics up there. Song Sacred Love by Daniel Nahmod. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place, such a holy place. You are blessed peace, blessed peace is all that you are. You are blessed peace, blessed peace is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place, such a holy place. You are deepest joy, deepest joy is all that you are. You are deepest joy, deepest joy is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place, such a holy place. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred
So we just breathe into this moment. And we know that spirit has no time or space. And so whether you're present in this moment as we are recording or that you look at this later, that know that this sacred love is connects us all at the deepest level. And so we just say, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for this opportunity to share as we move into Advent and this sacred part of the year where we celebrate the sacred. So, William Blake is a poet, and this is a line that just keeps coming back to me. I've used it so many times because tonight our discussion's called The Beams of Love. And he says in this one line from a poem of his, and we are put on earth a little space that we may learn to bear the beams of love. Learn to bear the beams of love. Sometimes we think that we're supposed to figure out what is mine to do in the world, but wonder if the only thing at the end of your life that you could really say this was what my whole life was about was that we would live our lives in such a way that we would embrace the sacred love around us and within us. And we could really look in the mirror and say, I'm sacred love. That's my job description, that I might bear the beams of love. And maybe sometimes I have to work pretty hard at seeing those beams with all that's going on in our world, but they are there. And the mystics tell us that when we surrender to the idea that love's everywhere, we start feeling it, that there is this presence that is lifting and holding for those of us that say yes to it. And so that's the invitation, especially at Christmas. And it's, to me, it's so interesting, the trip to Bethlehem, is that it's not just something that happened 2,000 years ago, but it's something that in a way our lives reflect that trip. Because if you think about the wise men and the shepherds, they were going that, well, we don't know when they actually went, but the early church fathers decided to make Christmas at the winter equinox. And there was a reason for that because many ancient cultures celebrate that time of year as when at the point of the darkness, the light comes back into the world. Spring comes back. And so our lives often reflect that. It's like, it's a dark time. We're on a trip. And I sometimes think of Christmas as a trip to the manger in my heart, like a trip to remember that within every person that Jesus demonstrated so beautifully is this Christ. It's so easy to forget that in our darkest times. So maybe we could look at Christmas not as a holiday, but a way of being alive in the world. That it's a reminder that whatever's coming up in our lives, there's a trip that we make into the darkness to be, and there, with enough surrender and resilience, we come out to a place of sacred love. So I was thinking, my mind went in a slightly different direction off of this, and I thought, part of Christmas for me is movies. My favorite movies, and my favorite ones, It's a Wonderful Life. And I once did a whole series, a Christmas series on it. It just was so much fun. But then I thought there's another one that really moves me, and you'll get maybe a kick out of this. It's about the Grinch stealing Christmas. And I'd like to read you a little about that because I think the Grinch could point out some of the things that we could learn in life. And I have my Grinchy moods. Maybe you've felt like that sometimes too. And so this is a line from what the Grinch says from Dr. Seuss. And it says, and the Grinch with his Grinch feet, ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't thought before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. Now, part of what I like about the Grinch Stole Christmas is that he's funny. And I'm thinking of the old original movie, how funny it was and how wonderful. But I also, thinking a little deeper about the Grinch himself, I thought, I wonder what life experiences he had that told him there was no love in the world. That, in fact, you almost wonder if he went to Whoville to steal all the decorations and the presents was to prove what he had already been told, that boy, people are really into their things and they could care less about each other. And in fact, the opposite happens for him. What is interesting about how the Who's, and especially Cindy Lou, do you remember her? One of the Who's that was so adorable. What's interesting is how many times, if somebody in our world hurts somebody else, the idea is for revenge or to use force against them. And what do the Who's do in Whoville? They do the opposite. They look for what is good and about themselves and about their celebration. And it wasn't about the gifts, though those are sweet and the decorations are wonderful. But I love the part that they have not given the Grinch power to make them unhappy. And so at the end of the story, remember what happens to the Grinch? It says, his heart becomes 3 times its size. And for me, that's the description, is that we go through these Grinchy times and there's the possibility that with love and surrender and valuing what's really important in our lives, that our heart just gets growing and growing. And once it grows, we attract more of that, the sacred love. And we learn to bear those beams of love. So A Course in Miracles says this: it is in your power to make this season holy, for it is your power to make the time of Christ be now. And Eric Butterworth, a Unity minister, and he wrote Discover the Power Within You. And it's a very, very popular book. Oprah put that book out as one of her all-time favorite books. And a lot of people have no idea it's a Unity minister that wrote it, but he says this about Christmas. He says, Christ was not born in Bethlehem, Jesus was. The birth of Christ goes back much, much further than that, to the first of Genesis, where it says, God created humans in our own image, in his own image. Jesus was not the creation of Christ in man. He discovered the Christ dimension in himself and fulfilled its potential. And so the Christmas story does not end with the birth of Jesus. Instead, it foretells of the Christ in you and compels you on your own awakening. This is what Christmas is really about, the celebration of the birth of the Christ light in you. And Jesus invites us over and over throughout Scripture, but one in John, he says, by this everyone will know you are my disciples, if you love one another. And then he invites us to abide in that love. Again, Course of Miracles, one of my favorite sayings. Everything is either an expression of love or a call to love. So wouldn't that be interesting to apply that to the Grinches, sometimes me? And when I'm feeling grinchy, I can go, I wonder what I'm missing, what I'm not taking care of to love myself and perhaps to be in situations that nurture and love me. And then some of the grinchiest people that we're going to meet at times, right? And wouldn't it shift it instead of, I know I can get some upset, especially on some of the things that these days are on social media or in the news or things like that. And I've worked on this. I go back and think, how is this person calling for love when maybe they're saying hostile things that I think are hurtful for other people or our country or things like that? And maybe I can open my heart a bit to that. So John Meacham speaks at Chautauqua, spoke, I think, was it last summer or the summer before? And I think it might have been the summer before. And I kept his recording and replayed it. He's a historian, an amazing, insightful historian. And he says this, and this is about love and our country. He says, in our finest hours, the soul of our country manifests itself in an inclination to open our arms rather than clench our fists. Wow. And so I thought about that and I thought, where do I clench my fists? And sure enough, again, some of the things in the news, I find myself clenching. And my sister recently taught me about unclenching and opening arms. And she and I are totally different political parties. We are totally different religious beliefs. And I know that, and we don't debate it. She has a totally different outlook. It's not part of our relationship. But I went into her house a few weeks ago, and there on her refrigerator was a picture of a politician and his family. And it was one that I feel is very hurtful to people I care about deeply. And I started crying. Tears were going down my cheeks. And she said, "What is that?" And I said, I'm sorry, I just have to say this, that I know you like him. I feel like he's destructive towards the LGBT community. And I know a lot of people in that community. In fact, I had in my former church transgendered people as well that were participants on our staff. And I have several friends with young adults that are transgendered. And so, and now this is where my sister just shone from her heart. She had that big Cindy Lou heart going on. And she said, okay. Well, she said, well, maybe both of us can pray that this gentleman opens his heart. And I was like, wow. She didn't push against me or say, well, because I know her belief system on LGBT issues are different than mine. She didn't do that. She just invited me into a higher consciousness. And I just looked at her and I thought, oh my God, I love her. Just how wonderful. And isn't that an invitation for us all in those situations where there's some really big differences, and maybe instead of a clenched fist, we have this invitation to open our arms. So this is from Dr. Martin Luther King, said this about Gandhi. Gandhi resisted evil with as much vigor and power as the violent resistor, but he resisted with love instead of hate. True pacifism is not unrealistic, submission to evil power. It is rather a courageous confrontation of evil by the power of love. That's not a Christmas story. Charles Fillmore, our co-founder of Unity, said this about love. And this is from 1 Corinthians. He quotes this verse 13. Love taketh no account of evil. And then he goes on to say, love never sees anything wrong in that which it loves. If it did, it would not be pure love. Pure love is without discriminating power. It simply pours itself out upon the object of its affection and takes no account of the result. By so doing, love sometimes casts its pearls before swine. But its power is so great that it transforms all that it touches. Wow. And to be able to love so purely, to me, would require some things from me to look at, would be setting my ego aside that needs to be right and surrendering. And that doesn't mean giving up on what I care about, but it means surrendering to have to do it to force my ideas. And to know that love is the only really resistance to evil, that what we call misunderstandings or lack of being in that Christ knowing within us, that sacred love. And it also takes resilience, because many times we are going to offer love into situations that won't appreciate it. And that's okay too, because it's really about the offering. Anything we offer out in love changes the vibration. Whether the person we're sending it to doesn't receive it, it's still out there. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who he was a 19th century mystic and monk, said this: the day will come when, after harnessing space, the winds, the tides, and gravitation, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And on that day, for the second time in the history of the world, we will have discovered fire. So I'd like to read from the book, and we've been using this book, The Most Surprising Song, and this was written by a Unity author, and the foreword's by James Dillett Freeman, who is a poet laureate, and wrote the Prayer of Protection for Unity. And this is exploring a most surprising song, exploring the mystical experience. And I want to read out of the Beams of Love chapter to you about this young man named, not so young actually now, but Jim Harrison. And he was an unlikely person for a mystical experience. He was a tobacco farmer, and he also did reconnaissance missions in World War II. He was not religious or a contemplative thinker at all, but he was really angry because his wife was not healing from an illness. And so he ruminated about this, and this is what he wrote. Maybe it wasn't really God's fault after all. So then I thought, all right, I take it back, and filling my heart with the tender love often reserved for my little daughter, I projected it toward God, thinking, if you exist, then I give you my love. I could feel this love being passed on, and then suddenly it returned, a brilliant shaft of light from out of the sky, brighter by far than the mid-morning sun, penetrating me with such an intensity of happiness and love as to halt me in my tracks with a jump for joy, and lingering for 5 or 10 seconds before fading away. I knew intuitively that this light, plainly visible, extending into the sky, somehow mysteriously stemmed from within. So then I knew for certain that God does indeed exist, and that He is love, and He is joy, and He is light, and that He stems from within as much as from without, and that we alone are responsible for our own suffering and problems in consequence of the misuse of our free will. And the author of the book goes on to say in 1 Corinthians 13, you've heard this, so faith, hope, love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love. And love never ends. That's 13, verse 8. And she goes and says, beautiful words, but merely words to most of us. However, there is evidence in the mystical experience that love does not fail. That if we open ourselves fully, letting go of our separate ego will, love will perform wonders in our lives. Beautiful. Emmett Fox, another mystic, wrote this about love. There is no difficulty that love will not conquer, no disease that enough love will not heal, nor no door that love will not open, no gulf that enough love will not bridge, no wall that enough love will not throw down, no wrong that enough love will make right. It makes no difference how deeply seated may be the trouble, how helpless the outlook, how muddled and tangled, how great the mistake. A sufficient realization of love will dissolve it all. If only you love enough, you will be the happiest, most powerful being in the world. So to me, that powerful invitation to love means that we can be part of the evolution of humanity at this time. And it's probably especially because we have, in some ways, stepped back, because we made a lot of forward steps to inclusion where there was separation, from appreciation of diversity. And now there's some fear that's caused some fear for some people. Kind of like the Grinch, there's a hurt. And the only solution will be not to contaminate it with more hurt on our parts. Again, from the Course in Miracles, some of my favorite. If I'm not feeling love in a situation, I have not yet arrived at the truth. I'll say that again because it's a pretty hard one, but I've used it sometimes in my most desperate saying, I don't know the truth yet. There's not me in this other situation, and we're against each other. There's a third way, and it's the truth. And I'll know it because I'll be peaceful, and I'll feel loving, and I will no longer feel pushing against that opposite energy. If I'm not feeling love in the situation, I have not yet arrived at the truth. Eric Butterworth again, one of my favorite Unity ministers. I cannot give you love, and you can't give me love. I can provide a radiation of consciousness, which creates an environment in which you find it comfortable and relaxing so that you can love yourself. So I'm going to end with just a little practice that from a different source than a Unity source or the Bible. This is from a gentleman called David Brooks, and maybe you've read him. New York Times. If you read the New York Times, you would know that he writes for the Times articles, but he also is really involved in in wanting people to realize their potential to add to the goodness of the world, to the healing of the world. And he just wrote a new book, and he's written many on morality and things. And this is called, and he was, by the way, at Chautauqua. He got a standing ovation that went on and on and on. He says, the book is called How to Know a Person, the Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Seen Deeply. And he said, he talked, and he's got a YouTube on this, by the way. He said that because people aren't feeling heard and valued and seen, that they lash out, and that off underneath the meanness that we're seeing is a sadness that we're not recognizing, that people are not feeling like they belong anymore. There's been a disruption in the way the world seems to be working, and they don't have their place in it. So he quoted in this YouTube statistics on loneliness, suicide. Maybe you've heard some of these. There's less participation in community, less trust as we get our information from social media and our information silos. So he asks, how do we learn to relate to each other instead of intellectually, by our hearts first, by making the first invitation and understanding that it's either it's an experience of love or a call for love. And so he described two kinds of ways of being out in the world. And I thought these were kind of interesting. He called one diminishers. And he said these are people who are so busy, they don't notice other people, want to get their way, get through life quickly and orderly, and they ignore, maybe stereotype. They don't ask questions or are curious about other people. They might even go as far as showing contempt and irritation, that you are in their way to getting what they want in their lives. And then another type he questioned, are you an illuminator? So illuminators are curious about you. They listen deeply to understand. They give eye contact. They look closely for nonverbal messages, knowing you are not I love this part, problem to be solved, but a mystery which will never fully be understood, but will be delightful in each revelation about you that they find. In their presence, you will experience dignity, value, and joy. They experience you as the face of God. So I thought about that, and I was appreciating our Chautauqua family and our board and Janine, and thinking how when we have summer services, we are really illuminators. Everyone that comes into the service, you can just see how inviting we are. And so we practice that really good on Sunday. And it's a little harder to practice that, I find, out in the world. But I was listening to him, and I went this past week for my annual blood test for my annual physical. And so I get in, and the person registering me, signing me in, I noticed, and I started thinking about David Brooks on this, and I've been, like I said, practicing it. And I noticed she had these beautiful fingernails. And then I noticed she had a tattoo, and on her tattoo it said, just breathe. And it had flowers around it, and it had a date under it. And I asked her about that as she was checking me in. And she said, this is what her mother said to her every time she was really upset. It was her mother's favorite line, and the date was when her mother had passed. I got kind of emotional, and she got emotional, and we smiled, and I saw her. And it was just an extra 2 minutes up at the desk where I slowed down. Now, I could have got a different reaction. She could have said, none of your business. Okay. And that's where my resilience would come in. So then I go back in to get my blood tested, and there's another lovely woman doing that. And I noticed she has this beautiful pin on her, and I asked her about it, and it was from her mother. And she said, Today is the day, the anniversary of my mother's death. A simple question. And her eyes got all watery, and I said, "You're thinking of her right now. You've been thinking about her today." And she said, "Yeah, I've been thinking about her." And after she took the blood, I get up, and this has never happened to me before, but she grabs me, puts her arms around me, and gives me this big hug. And it was like, make my day, in the best sorts of ways. So wonder if you're an introvert, though, right? Many people are introverts, and I will start, as my husband accuses me of, I'll start a conversation anywhere with anyone. So the practice of being illuminator might not be a stretch for me as much as it might be from some people. It's probably why I became a minister, because it just is a joy to find out about people and be with them and be with their life passages and understand all those things. But I'm thinking that if you're an introvert, then yours can be a silent embracing them. It's like sometimes I do that at driving when cars are going by, and maybe if somebody races around me, and I just send a blessing to them and say, they're, God loves them. And there are people in the world that love them, and I just do a blessing of keeping them safe. Like I'll do that with cars, or I'm stopped at a stoplight. So it doesn't have to be engaging somebody if that's not your style, but we can all be illuminators and maybe slow down our life a little so we don't get in. And I've been a diminisher as well, been so busy that I missed what was really important. So again, from the Course in Miracles, I want to repeat this as we end, and then I'm going to have Janine sing us out. And this time when she sings Sacred Love, I'm not going to put up the lyrics, but I'm just going to have us ask you to close your eyes. You've seen the words now, and now to let them sink in. So before we sing the song, just back from the Course in Miracles, it is in your power to make this season holy. It is in your power to make the time of Christ be now. And so God bless you. And Janine.
You are sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place, such a holy place. You are blessed peace is all that you are. You are blessed peace is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place, such a holy place. You are deepest joy is all that you are. You are deepest joy is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place. Such a holy place. You are sacred love. Sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love. Sacred love is all that you are. All that you are.
Thank you, Janine. And may all of you have a blessed Christmas this holiday as we live from that place of sacred love.